All right, earlier this week, Tony discussed how the Biden-Harris administration's failure to manage our southern border has literally enabled the exploitation and sex trafficking of minors. Now, this story certainly has been going on for years, but new details continue to emerge that paint an absolutely heartbreaking picture of the abuse that is taking place. Just within the past week, for example, more than 150 unaccompanied migrant children as young as 5 years old. It's 5 years old. They've been sent across the Rio Grande into the small town of Eagle Pass. Look, is this administration not only allowing lawlessness, but actually fueling it? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Tara Rodas. She worked for the Department of Health and Human Services, and she was one of the whistleblowers who exposed the human trafficking problem that's taking place that has been enabled by the Biden-Harris administration. Tara, thank you for joining us on Washington Watch. It's an honor to have you with us.
Well, Jody, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and I really appreciate you shining a light on what we now know is government-sponsored, taxpayer-funded child trafficking. I can assure you I never thought I'd be saying that.
Yeah, and I can assure you I never thought I'd be hearing that. It's just absolutely unthinkable. And of course, you were among the whistleblowers who exposed all of this. So were it not for people like you, we would not even be aware of what's been going on. But look, you've shared your story before, but why don't you just briefly share it again for some of our viewers and listeners who may not be aware?
Sure. So at the beginning of 2021, the Biden-Harris administration made a call to all federal employees. And they said, look, we have a crisis with these unaccompanied children on the border. And they asked employees across the government to leave their agencies to help with their crisis. And I raised my hand and said, here I am, send me. I thought I was going to be coloring and doing puzzles with children. My husband is actually from El Salvador, so I'm a Spanish speaker. And I thought I could be that person who would be there to greet the children and, find out what are their plans about coming to America and living the American dream. And sadly, Jody, it didn't take very long for those illusions to evaporate because I saw children in crisis and children didn't know the people we were sending them to. And then it didn't take very long to discover that the children's story and this sponsor story, they don't match. And then children began to tell us the truth, that they were lured here, that they were told, if you leave your family, so this is family separation. If you leave your family and you come here, I'm going to pay the journey because you're special. You're going to have to live with me until you pay off your debt. But so, for example, instead of making $2.50 a day, I'm going to pay you $6 an hour. So these children, some of whom cannot even speak Spanish, they speak Mayan dialects. They are vulnerable indigenous people of Guatemala. They're lured here under the promise that they're going to go from $2.50 a day to $6 an hour. And they and their families believe they're going to be Elon Musk rich. It's horrific. It's terrible. And then these children are put in modern day slavery. Children have reported being sexually abused, being pimped out by their sponsors. We put forward that some of these sponsors are actually gang members. My husband is from El Salvador, and MS-13 and 18th Street Gang are serious, violent criminal organizations. And we revealed that some of these sponsors actually are gang members. So it's really horrific to know that with taxpayer dollars, these vulnerable children are being shipped to known bad actors, and the United States is the white glove delivery system. We're the FedEx of children from the border to traffickers. There are people, and they are exploiting our system, and they're exploiting good people with good hearts who want to help the kids. I had no idea children were being trafficked. So I think it's a shocking story that people need to know about. This is not humanitarian. This isn't helping the children. They're in slavery.
Absolutely. And it is for that reason that you have called this government-sponsored, taxpayer-funded child trafficking. How is it that such a horrifying thing has now become a partisan issue?
Yes, well, that is the shocker because everybody should want to protect and defend children. So if you're not in the box of protect and defend children, I don't think that, that puts you outside of all political realms, right? At this point, we're talking it's good versus evil, right? Nobody thinks that children should be pimped out by sponsors. And sadly, failed policies and policymakers have created this crisis because they rolled back the ability for people to come across the border. They made it simple so that vetting is not being done. And then they opened the floodgates for these children to come across to be reunited to these people. And so you have criminal actors crossing the border, and then we're shipping children to those criminal actors. It's just simple as that. And
it's unbelievable. Tara, and the legacy media, they've been a part of that. We all remember how they were panicking over some 1,500 or so unaccounted children during the Trump administration. And now they have, by rolling back those policies, have enabled this crisis to get worse. Final comment, we've got just less than a minute to go. Final comment that the American people need to know.
Sure. So in 2021, when we began reporting cases, we thought there were only maybe 50 children involved. When I testified before Congress in 2023, we knew 85,000 children were missing. A recent DHS report showed that 320,000 children now are unaccounted for. And as we just learned from the Free Press, the sex trafficking of children has more than tripled under this administration. These are failed policies. We need people who are going to put sane policies in place. We need to rescue children, and we need to seriously prosecute criminals.
Thank you so much, Tara Rodas, for your courage to come forward as a whistleblower, to put the spotlight on this and to deal with it courageously. And thank you for joining us today on Washington Watch.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you for shining a light on government-sponsored, taxpayer-funded child trafficking.